The air in the Galactic Council chamber felt heavy, suffused with the ethereal glow of thousands of light panels. Captain Jake Morrison stood rigid in his formal diplomatic uniform, trying not to fidget as the vote tally continued to climb on the massive holographic display suspended above the central dais. The shimmering forms of hundreds of alien representatives, some humanoid, others utterly foreign in their morphology, shifted and murmured throughout the vast hall. Beside him, Ambassador Lisa Hayes gripped the railing of the human delegation's platform, her knuckles white. Admiral Rick Cooper stood slightly behind them both, his weathered face an unreadable mask, communicator clutched tightly in one hand. "This is wrong," Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible. "They can't possibly—" "Quiet," Jake cautioned, though he shared her sentiment. Earth's rapid technological advancement and territorial expansion over the past century had unsettled the ancient galactic powers. But Exile, the very concept seemed medieval, absurd in an age of interstellar civilization. The Xerian Chancellor, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin that rippled with bioluminescent patterns, raised all four of his arms for silence. The chamber grew still. "The final tally stands at 723 in favor, 124 opposed," the Chancellor announced, his melodious voice amplified throughout the vast space. "The motion carries. The species known as humanity, originating from Earth in the Sol system, is hereby ordered to withdraw all colonial presence, military assets, and technological infrastructure to within 100 light-years of their home star within 50 standard cycles." A susurration of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jake felt his stomach drop. 100 light-years was nothing, a tiny bubble in the vast ocean of the galaxy. It would mean abandoning over 60% of human colonial territory, research outposts, and mining operations that had taken generations to establish. "Chancellor," Lisa stepped forward, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. "The human delegation requests permission to address the Council." The Chancellor's skin flickered with patterns that Jake had learned to recognize as reluctance. But protocol demanded that the condemned be allowed to speak. He nodded. Lisa's voice rang clear in the suddenly silent chamber. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today, not to dispute your authority, but to appeal to your wisdom. Humanity has achieved faster progress than most species in our brief time among the stars, but we have done so through determination and innovation, not malice." Jake watched the assembled delegates, noting the subtle shifts in posture and coloration that betrayed skepticism, fear, and in some cases, sympathy. "Our artificial intelligence research has broken new ground. Yes, but always with safeguards. Our colonial expansion has been aggressive by some standards, but we have never encroached on claimed systems. We seek to contribute to galactic civilization, not threaten it." The Xerian Chancellor's bioluminescence pulsed with impatience. "Ambassador Hayes, the Council's decision is not based on specific infractions, but on pattern recognition. The trajectory of human development and expansion poses an existential risk to galactic stability. The vote has been cast." Lisa opened her mouth to protest further, but the Chancellor raised all four arms again, cutting her off. "This session of the Galactic Council is adjourned. Formal documentation of the Exile decree will be transmitted to Earth's government within 1 standard day. The 50-cycle countdown begins immediately." As the delegates began to disperse, Jake felt a sudden pressure on his shoulder, Admiral Cooper's hand, gripping him firmly. "We need to go," Cooper said, his voice low and controlled. The Admiral's eyes, however, told a different story. There was something there beyond anger or shock, a strange intensity that Jake couldn't quite place. As they turned to leave, Jake noticed Cooper's thumb moving across his communicator, sending a simple text-only message to an undisclosed recipient. "Operation Exodus, go." The journey back to Earth was conducted in tense silence. Lisa spent most of it composing emergency briefs for the United Earth government, while Cooper sequestered himself in his private cabin, emerging only for meals. Jake found himself adrift, replaying the council session in his mind, searching for some angle they might have missed, some appeal they could still make. When they finally reached Earth orbit 3 days later, the news had preceded them. The planet below was in turmoil. Protests outside government buildings, panicked selling on colonial investment markets, military vessels being recalled from distant outposts. The Exile had begun. The initial meeting with the Security Council was chaotic. Representatives from Mars, Europa, Titan, and the outer colonies demanded answers, military responses, even outright rejection of the Council's decree. Admiral Cooper, surprisingly, argued for compliance. "The Galactic Council controls trade routes we depend on," he stated flatly. "They possess technologies we've barely begun to understand. Open defiance would be disastrous. So we just surrender?" General Hawkins of the Mars Colonial Force slammed his fist on the table. "Abandon everything we've built beyond their arbitrary boundary?" Cooper's face remained impassive. "I said we comply. I didn't say we surrender." Something in his tone made Jake study the Admiral more carefully. There was that same, strange intensity he'd noticed on the Council station. "Admiral Cooper will oversee our strategic realignment," the security director announced. "All colonial governors will coordinate with his office on the withdrawal timetable." Later that evening, as Jake prepared to return to his apartment for the first time in weeks, Cooper intercepted him in the corridor. "Captain Morrison, walk with me." They made their way to a small garden terrace overlooking the sprawling lights of New Geneva. Cooper activated a small device that emitted a low hum, a privacy field. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this conversation," Cooper said, his voice barely above a whisper despite the privacy field. "The Exile is not what it seems." Jake frowned. "I was there, Admiral. It seemed pretty damn clear." "No," Cooper shook his head. "Not the Council's intent. Our response to it." He paused, studying Jake's face carefully. "Tell me, Captain, what's the fundamental problem with the Council's control over interstellar civilization?" Jake considered. "Their conservatism? Their fear of rapid change?" "Precisely. The Council maintains stability by suppressing innovation, particularly in AI research, quantum manipulation, and certain branches of physics. They've been doing it for millennia. And now, humanity has been freed from those constraints." Understanding dawned slowly. "You're saying the Exile is an opportunity?" Cooper's face broke into the first genuine smile Jake had seen from him. "Exiling us to our own corner of space means we no longer have to abide by their technological restrictions. No more Council inspectors in our research facilities. No more treaty limitations on our computational systems. But we lose everything beyond the boundary." "What we appear to lose," Cooper corrected. "Operation Exodus began 5 years ago. Captain, when our intelligence section first detected the Council's growing concern with our trajectory, we've been preparing for this possibility." Jake stared at the Admiral, stunned. "Preparing how?" "Dead star systems, Captain. Empty space. The places no one looks at on galactic maps. We've been building there, in secret. Research facilities, shipyards, even habitats. Small at first, then larger as we developed better stealth technologies. That would be an enormous undertaking." "Indeed. And now we accelerate. Publicly. We'll make a show of dismantling our colonial infrastructure, bringing our people home, retreating behind the Exile boundary. Privately, we'll be moving key personnel and resources to our facilities in the deep dark." Jake shook his head, trying to process the implications. "Why tell me this?" "Because I need someone with diplomatic credentials who can still move freely in Council space. Someone who can be our eyes and ears while we work. And because Ambassador Hayes, while brilliant, is too much of an idealist to see the necessity of what we're doing." Jake looked out at the city lights, thinking of the billions of humans across a dozen worlds who would be affected by what happened next. Is this sanctioned? Does the Security Council know? Cooper's expression hardened slightly. A select few. Compartmentalization is essential. So I'll ask directly. Are you with us, Captain Morrison? Jake thought of the dismissive flicker of the Chancellor's skin patterns, the casual way the Council had voted to contain an entire species. He extended his hand. I'm with you, Admiral. In the heart of the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Amy Stone adjusted the gravitational containment field around a peculiar biological sample, a cellular structure unlike anything found in Earth's biosphere. The asteroid base around her hummed with activity. Scientists and engineers working with quiet intensity on projects that officially didn't exist. Any changes in the nucleus structure? Her assistant asked, peering at the holographic magnification. Minimal, Amy replied. But the response to the quantum resonance is stronger than in the Altarian samples. Log it as a positive for weapons vulnerability. The door to the laboratory slid open, admitting Sam Wright, the facility's chief engineer. His expression was grim. The Council's inspectors have arrived at Jupiter Station. They're beginning verification of our technology decommissioning. Amy's mouth tightened. How long before they might start looking out here? Cooper says we have at least 6 months before they'd expect to see any activity in the outer system. By then, we need to be invisible or gone. She nodded toward the rows of samples in their containment fields. We're cataloging vulnerabilities in every known Council species biology. Defensive measures only. But if they found this... They won't, Sam assured her. And the power cores. Amy smiled thinly. The prototypes are exceeding expectations, based on the precursor technology we found in the Cygnus ruins. But improved. Enough energy to power a city in something the size of a briefcase, with no radiation signature. Sam whistled low. Perfect for hidden bases. Or ships that don't want to be found, Amy added. Across the solar system, similar conversations were taking place in facilities hidden within asteroids, beneath the surfaces of uninhabited moons, and in the engineered hollows of comets. Humanity was packing up, but not in the way the Council expected. Captain Dan Miller guided his scout ship through the debris field of a long-dead star system, over 30 light-years beyond the Exile boundary. His sensors were passive only, minimizing any energy signature that might be detected. Contact bearing 173 Mark IV. His first officer, Sarah Chen, reported quietly. Mass consistent with the supply convoy. Dan nodded. Right on schedule. Take us in. Quarter impulse until we're in the shadow of that gas giant's moon. The rendezvous was one of dozens happening simultaneously across what humanity had begun calling the Deep Dark. The vast, mostly empty regions between the populous systems that interested the Galactic Council. Here, unnoticed, the greatest covert operation in human history was unfolding. As his ship docked with the larger transport, Dan reviewed the manifest. Quantum computing cores that violated at least 6 Council technology restrictions, gravitational manipulation components, synthetic organic technology components, the seeds of what Admiral Cooper called liberation through exile. Mia Torres, commanding a similar mission in the remains of a neutron star system over 60 light-years from Earth, was overseeing the construction of something far larger, a shipyard, built into the hollowed-out husk of a dwarf planet. The skeletal frames of vessels unlike any in Earth's public fleet were taking shape in the cavernous construction bays. How many can we complete before the deadline? She asked her chief engineer. At current pace? Maybe 12 of the dreadnoughts, 30 of the smaller vessels. If we get the additional fabrication units from the Europa facilities before the Council impounds them, we might double that. Mia studied the design schematics floating before her. Ships designed not just for stealth, but for combat on a scale humanity had never before contemplated. And the AI integration? Ready for testing, without Council restrictions. The systems are, well, There's something else. Commander. Self-evolving, adaptive. They think. She nodded slowly. Let's hope Cooper knows what he's doing. These aren't research vessels we're building. Nick Walsh, meanwhile, was coordinating the most dangerous aspect of Operation Exodus, the recruitment and extraction of key scientific and military personnel from colonies that would soon be abandoned. His small transport ship, disguised as a routine supply runner, docked at the research station orbiting HD 85512b, a verdant exoplanet now slated for evacuation. Dr. Zoe Martinez? He asked, approaching a dark-haired woman working alone in the station's xenobiology lab. She looked up, instantly wary. Yes? He showed her a small holographic projector with Admiral Cooper's authorization. How would you like to continue your research without council oversight? Permanently. Her eyes widened as she understood the implication. You're not bringing everyone back within the boundary, are you? Nick smiled thinly. Some of us are going much farther out instead. We need your expertise in alien biology. Interested? Back on Earth, Jake Morrison was maintaining his official role, attending the increasingly tense meetings between council verification teams and Earth government representatives. The show of compliance was meticulous. Ships returning to port, research facilities being decommissioned, colonial populations being relocated. Lisa Hayes remained the public face of humanity's response. Her initial defiance now tempered with diplomatic pragmatism as she negotiated the details of the withdrawal. Jake watched her carefully, wondering if she suspected the truth, feeling a growing weight of guilt at the deception. After one particularly difficult session, where the council representatives had demanded access to Earth's central AI research facility, Jake found Admiral Cooper in his makeshift office at the government complex. They're getting more intrusive, Jake reported. Lisa is running out of ways to stall them. Cooper nodded, studying a series of encrypted reports on his secure terminal. It's accelerating everywhere. We've had to abandon 3 deep space construction sites when council patrols came too close. Are we going to make it? 50 years sounds like a long time, but if they keep tightening the inspection regime... We don't need 50 years, Cooper interrupted. We need 5, maybe 10 at the outside. By then, enough of our key infrastructure will be established beyond their reach. Jake hesitated, then asked the question that had been troubling him for months. What exactly are we preparing for, Admiral? This goes beyond preserving our research independence. Cooper's eyes met his, that same intensity burning in them. Insurance, Captain. The Council maintains stability, yes, but at the cost of progress. There are threats in this galaxy that they've chosen to ignore, to deny, to mythologize rather than confront. We need to be ready. What threats? Cooper's only answer was a grim smile and a return to his reports. 3 years into the Exile process, the public narrative was one of reluctant compliance. Colonial worlds within the boundary had seen population increases as those from abandoned outposts resettled. The United Earth government had established a new department, Boundary Administration, to manage the reduced human sphere of influence. Privately, Operation Exodus had moved into its second phase. The initial hidden facilities had become staging areas for more ambitious constructions. Massive habitat stations were being assembled in the darkness between stars. Shipyards, operating at full capacity. Research that would have been unthinkable under council oversight was yielding breakthroughs in propulsion, weapons technology, and artificial intelligence. Captain Dan Miller, now commanding one of the first completed vessels of humanity's Shadow Fleet, received new orders from Admiral Cooper's headquarters, established in an artificial habitat, hidden within a dark nebula, 50 light-years beyond the Exile boundary. System X7742, Dan read aloud to his executive officer as they reviewed the mission brief. Unmapped, uninhabited, unremarkable. Why are we diverting resources to survey it? Chief Alex Reed, his intelligence officer, highlighted a section of the data. Unusual energy readings detected by one of our long-range probes. Possibly natural, but the pattern has regularities that suggest artificial origin. Dan frowned. Council technology? Unknown. The system is well outside normal Council traffic patterns. It's in what they call the Empty Gulf, a region with few habitable worlds that they've largely ignored. Dan studied the coordinates. Prepare for departure. Stealth protocols throughout the approach. As their ship, the UES Pathfinder, slipped silently through the void towards System X7742, Jake Morrison was making a rare visit to Admiral Cooper's hidden command center. The journey had required 3 separate ships and elaborate security measures to ensure he wasn't tracked from Earth. The facility itself stunned him. A massive structure built within an artificially hollowed asteroid, housing thousands of personnel, shipyards, research labs, hydroponic gardens, living quarters, a complete society hidden from the Council's eyes. This is beyond anything I imagined, Jake admitted, as Cooper led him through the Central Operations Center. One of 17 similar facilities now operational, Cooper said with undisguised pride. And our AI research has advanced decades beyond what was possible under Council restrictions. We're developing technologies they've never dreamed of. Jake studied the Admiral's face. But why? What are we preparing to fight? Instead of answering directly, Cooper led him to a secure briefing room where several other senior officers waited, including Dr. Zoe Martinez, whom Jake recognized from personnel files as one of the scientists extracted from colonies beyond the boundary. Show him, Cooper instructed. Zoe activated a holographic display showing what appeared to be ancient structures. Massive, geometrically precise ruins on a barren world. System X7742, she explained. Captain Miller's team discovered these 3 months ago. They're approximately 50,000 years old, constructed by a civilization we've designated the Precursors. And they left a message. The hologram shifted to show strange, flowing symbols. It took our AI systems weeks to decipher even the basics of their language. But the warning is clear. She paused, her expression grave. They called them the Devourers, a species or force that consumes entire star systems, converting all matter to energy to feed itself. The Precursors tracked their movement across multiple galaxies over millions of years. Jake stared at the images, a chill running down his spine. And, Cooper answered, his voice low. Based on the Precursors' projections and our analysis of astronomical anomalies, the Devourers will reach the edges of Council space within approximately 50 years. The significance wasn't lost on Jake. The same time frame as our Exile order. Precisely, Cooper nodded. The Council knows, or at least their oldest member species do. The knowledge has been suppressed, mythologized. They've chosen denial over preparation. But why exile us specifically, if they're aware of this threat? Because our development trajectory, particularly our AI research, terrifies them almost as much as the Devourers, Zoe explained. Humanity solves problems through innovation and adaptation. The Council maintains stability through stagnation and control. When faced with an existential threat, they chose to eliminate the disruptive influence, us, rather than embrace the very changes that might save them. Jake sank into a chair, processing the implications. So, while they force us to retreat, you're actually building, what? A defense force? An insurance policy, Cooper corrected. If the Council comes to its senses and prepares adequately, wonderful. If not, humanity will be ready to defend itself, and perhaps save what we can of galactic civilization in the process. The UES Pathfinder continued its methodical exploration of the precursor ruins on X7742, each discovery more astonishing than the last. The ancient structures contained not just warnings, but technologies, some still functioning after 50 millennia. Dan Miller watched as his science team carefully extracted what appeared to be a data storage device from a sealed chamber deep within the main complex. "The architecture is incredible," his xenoarchaeologist commented. "They built this to last, to be found." "By us specifically?" Dan asked. "By whoever survived long enough to look in the empty places," Alex Reed replied, studying the intricate markings on the device. The precursors mapped the Devourer's path across multiple galaxies. They knew which systems would be consumed first, which might be spared until later. They left their legacy in the places they calculated would remain untouched the longest. Dan's communicator chimed with an encrypted message from command. "We're not the only ones out here anymore," he informed his team after reading it. "The Altarians have begun their own exploration of the empty gulf. Admiral Cooper wants us to make contact." "The Altarians?" Alex looked surprised. "They're council members. If they report us operating this far beyond the boundary..." "Apparently, they've gone rogue too," Dan replied. "Dr. Martinez has been in contact with some of their scientists. They've been quietly investigating the same astronomical anomalies we have. They know about the Devourers." Within weeks, the Pathfinder had made contact with an Altarian survey vessel in a nearby system. The initial meeting was tense, both sides suspicious, but the shared knowledge of the coming threat quickly dissolved barriers. "Your Admiral Cooper has been busy," the Altarian commander observed, studying the human vessel with 4 multifaceted eyes. "Our council representatives would be most disturbed to see the technologies you've developed." "As would they to discover your presence in the empty gulf," Dan countered. "It seems we share a common skepticism of council policy." The Altarian's skin flushed a deep blue. Amusement. Dan's xenobiology briefing had told him. "More than skepticism. Captain Miller, the Kithriaks, what you call the Devourers, are no myth. Our oldest historical records speak of their last passage through this galaxy over 2 million years ago. Only a handful of our worlds survived. Those in regions the Kithriaks found indigestible." "You've known all along," Alex said, understanding dawning. "Your species has been preparing too." "Some of us," the Altarian admitted. "A minority faction. Most prefer the Council's approach, denial, with the faint hope that our region will again be spared." As the Pathfinder's mission continued, similar contacts were made with vessels from other dissident factions. The Kepler Federation, the Rigelian technocracy, even a small group from the Xerian homeworld, operating without their government's knowledge. A loose alliance of the concerned began to form in the shadows between stars. Dr. Zoe Martinez found herself at the center of this emerging coalition. Her expertise in xenobiology making her the perfect liaison between human operations and the growing number of alien collaborators. She established a secure research facility at one of the human deep space habitats, where scientists from a dozen species could share information about the Devourer threat and pool technological resources. "The Council's restrictions have kept us isolated, competing for relative advantage rather than collaborating," she explained to Jake Morrison during his next visit to the command center. "Out here, we're discovering that our various technologies complement each other in ways none of us anticipated." Jake had been promoted to Admiral following Cooper's official retirement, a cover for his full-time leadership of Operation Exodus. Jake now served as the primary link between the overt human government within the boundary and the shadow civilization growing beyond it. "How much of this does Lisa know?" he asked Cooper during a private moment. "Enough," Cooper replied. "She's still our public face, still negotiating our compliance with the Exile decree. She knows we've established some research outposts beyond the boundary, but not the full scale. It's safer for her that way." The precarious balance between public compliance and private preparation continued for another 2 years. The human colonies beyond the boundary were officially abandoned, their populations relocated within the 100-light-year sphere dictated by the Council. Council inspectors regularly verified the disarmament of military facilities and the decommissioning of advanced research installations. All while, in the deep dark, humanity's shadow fleet grew. The habitats expanded, research accelerated, and the loose coalition with other species' dissident factions strengthened into a more formal alliance, united by their shared knowledge of the approaching threat. Then, in the sixth year of the Exile process, everything changed. The message came through the most secure channels, transmitted from a Kepler Federation vessel operating near the outer rim of Council space. The Devourers had arrived, decades ahead of the Precursor's projections. A distant outpost world, home to a small mining colony of a minor Council species, had gone silent. Subsequent investigation found only a barren rock where a habitable planet had been, its entire mass converted to energy and absorbed by something that had already moved on to the next system. The Council's response was panic barely disguised as deliberation. Emergency sessions were convened. Ancient defense protocols, neglected for millennia, were hastily reviewed. Military vessels were dispatched to establish a defensive perimeter. Too few. Too late. Jake Morrison, attending a verification inspection at the Jupiter shipyards, received the news via his secure channel to Cooper's headquarters. "It's time," Cooper's message read simply. Within hours, the carefully maintained facade began to fall away. Hidden compartments in supposedly decommissioned human vessels opened to reveal advanced weapon systems. Cloaked ships emerged from concealment within the boundary. And, from beyond, the first wave of humanity's shadow fleet appeared. Massive dreadnoughts, unlike anything the Council had ever seen, accompanied by swarms of smaller craft, controlled by AI systems far beyond legal limits. On Earth, Lisa Hayes addressed the Council's ambassadors directly. "For 6 years, we have complied with your exile decree while preparing for what we knew was coming," she told them, her expression resolute. "The Devourers are not myth. They are not a future problem. They are here, now, and they will consume everything in their path unless stopped. Humanity stands ready to defend not just ourselves, but all sentient life in this galaxy." The Council representatives reacted with outrage, accusations of deception, and treaty violations. Their protests fell silent when the first reports came in from the Outer Rim. Council defense vessels obliterated. 3 more systems consumed. The Devourer swarm growing with each world it devoured. Admiral Cooper took direct command of the human-led coalition fleet, establishing his headquarters on the UES Defiance, the largest of the Shadow Dreadnoughts. Dr. Zoe Martinez coordinated the multi-species scientific team that had been studying the precursor data, searching for any weakness in the Devourer's seemingly unstoppable consumption process. Captain Dan Miller, now commanding the UES Vanguard, led the first successful engagement against a Devourer scout formation. The battle, in a system just beyond the Council's defensive perimeter, demonstrated both the effectiveness of the Coalition's combined technologies and the terrifying adaptability of the enemy. "They learn," Dan reported afterward, his face grim in the holographic transmission to Cooper's command center. "Each attack form we used was less effective the second time, nearly useless the third. We had to keep shifting tactics, weapons configurations, everything." "Casualties?" Cooper asked. 17 ships lost, over 1,000 personnel. But we stopped their advance in that sector, at least temporarily. As the Devourer incursion expanded, attacking along multiple vectors, the Council's response remained fragmented and inadequate. Their military, long maintained as a ceremonial peacekeeping force, was utterly unprepared for an enemy that consumed entire planets for energy and adapted to every weapon used against it. In desperation, Chancellor Crick of the Zirian Concordat, son of the Chancellor who had overseen humanity's exile vote, sent a formal request to the human government. "Help us." The response came not from Earth, but from Admiral Cooper aboard the Defiance. "The human-led coalition will deploy our full defensive capabilities to protect all inhabited worlds, regardless of political affiliation," he transmitted. "In return, We require the immediate and permanent revocation of the Exile decree and full integration of Council and Coalition forces under a unified command structure. The Council, facing extinction, had no choice but to agree. What followed was the largest coordinated military operation in galactic history. Coalition vessels deployed from their hidden bases across the deep dark, establishing defensive perimeters around population centers while evacuating the most vulnerable worlds. Human AI systems, integrated with Altarian predictive technology and Rigelian energy weapons, gave the combined fleet capabilities that would have been impossible for any single species. Dr. Zoe Martinez's research team, working frantically as the battles raged, finally identified a critical weakness in the Devourer's consumption process. "It's a coherence vulnerability," she explained to the Coalition command staff. The Devourers maintain a quantum-entangled network across their entire swarm. It's how they adapt so quickly, sharing information instantaneously regardless of distance. But it's also a potential point of failure. Chief Alex Reed, who had been coordinating intelligence gathering on Devourer movements, immediately grasped the implications. If we could disrupt that network, we could turn their greatest strength into a catastrophic vulnerability, Zoe confirmed. But it would require generating a quantum interference field on a scale we've never attempted. "The precursor power cores," Cooper said thoughtfully. "Combined with the Altarian phase technology and our AI coordination, it could work," Zoe agreed. "But we'd need to deploy the disruptors at multiple points simultaneously, deep within Devourer-controlled space. It would be a suicide mission for conventional vessels." Cooper's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we'll build unconventional ones." The next phase of the campaign required the most dangerous operations yet. While the main Coalition fleet held defensive lines around key population centers, specialized strike teams penetrated deep into regions already consumed by the Devourers, planting massive disruptor devices at carefully calculated positions. Captain Dan Miller commanded one such mission, guiding the UES Vanguard through the hollow shell of what had once been a thriving star system. The ship's enhanced stealth systems, combining human AI adaptive camouflage with Rigelian energy dampening, kept them invisible to the Devourer constructs that swarmed through the void, consuming the last fragments of the system's former planets. "Approaching deployment coordinates," his navigator reported, voice tense but controlled. Dan studied the tactical display, watching the swirling patterns of Devourer activity. "Hold position. Wait for the gap in their patrol pattern." The bridge was silent, every crew member acutely aware that detection would mean instant destruction. The disruptor in their cargo bay, a massive device combining technologies from 4 different species, was one of 12 being positioned throughout Devourer-controlled space. All had to be activated simultaneously for the plan to work. "Pattern shift detected," the tactical officer whispered. "We have a window in 40 seconds. Dan nodded grimly. "Take us in. 1/4 impulse. Maintain stealth envelope at maximum." The Vanguard slipped silently toward the designated coordinates, a region of empty space that had once held a habitable planet. As they reached position, the engineering team prepared to deploy the disruptor. "We're being scanned," the tactical officer suddenly reported, tension evident in her voice. "Unknown configuration, but it's cutting through our stealth field." Dan made a split-second decision. "Deploy the disruptor now, then emergency jump to fallback coordinates." The massive device separated from the ship, its autonomous systems activating as it drifted toward its final position. The Vanguard's engines flared as it prepared for its escape jump. Too late. A Devourer construct, a massive, geometrically impossible shape that hurt the human eye to look upon, materialized directly in their path. "Evasive maneuvers," Dan ordered. But the tactical display was suddenly alive with more constructs, surrounding them, closing in. His communications officer looked up, confused. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the construct." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was Not a voice at all, but rather a symphonic cascade of tones and harmonics that somehow formed words in their minds. "You are not like the others," the Devourer communicated. "You build, you adapt, you hide in darkness and emerge stronger." Interesting. Dan glanced at his tactical officer, who gave a slight nod. The weapons were ready if needed. "We fight to survive," Dan replied simply. "As all life does." There was a pause. The constructs holding position around the vanguard but making no move to attack. "The quantum disruption devices you deploy, their purpose is known to us. Elegant, unprecedented in our experience across 17 galaxies." Another pause. "You may proceed." The constructs began to disperse, opening a path for the vanguard to escape. Dan's first officer leaned close. "Sir, could this be a trick?" "Possibly," Dan acknowledged. "But if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already." He made his decision. "Maintain course to the fallback coordinates, and send a priority message to Admiral Cooper. The Devourers are talking to us." As the Vanguard escaped to safety, similar scenarios played out across Devourer-controlled space. Some disruptor teams encountered resistance and were destroyed. Others, like Dan's, experienced the unexpected phenomenon of Devourer communication. By the operation's end, 9 of the 12 disruptors were successfully deployed. Enough, Dr. Martinez calculated, to proceed with the plan. The final confrontation took place in the heart of what had once been the galactic core. Now, a swirling maelstrom of Devourer activity. The combined coalition fleet, over 3,000 vessels from 27 different species, coordinated by human AI systems, faced off against the main Devourer swarm. From the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Cooper gave the order that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. "Activate the disruptors." Across 9 points in space, the quantum disruption devices activated simultaneously, generating a cascading interference pattern that rippled through the Devourer's entangled network. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Constructs froze in space, their impossible geometries fluctuating wildly as the coherence that bound them together began to fail. "All vessels, engage primary targets as designated," Cooper ordered. And the coalition fleet surged forward, unleashing weapons that would have been unimaginable a decade earlier. Rigelian singularity projectors, Altarian phase disruptors, human gravitic lances powered by miniaturized black holes, all coordinated by AI systems that adapted tactics faster than any organic mind could process. The battle raged for 3 days. Coalition vessels fought and died alongside council ships. Former exiles and their erstwhile judges united against extinction. The Devourers, their network disrupted but not destroyed, fought with decreasing coordination but undiminished ferocity. In the final hours, as the coalition fleet closed in on what sensors identified as the primary Devourer nexus, a direct communication channel opened to the Defiance. "You have done what no other species has accomplished in our long consumption." The Devourer voice, that was not a voice, proclaimed. "You have forced us to consider alternatives." Cooper, exhausted after 72 hours of continuous command, straightened in his chair. "What alternatives?" "Coexistence, controlled consumption of uninhabited systems only, a new paradigm." The bridge crew exchanged glances, hardly daring to hope. "In exchange for what?" Cooper asked cautiously. "Knowledge. Your method of quantum disruption. Your adaptive technologies. We would learn from you, rather than consume you." Cooper's eyes narrowed. "And if we refuse?" "Then this battle continues. Perhaps you prevail here. Perhaps not. But we exist across multiple galaxies. We would return, eventually, with countermeasures to your disruption technology." Cooper opened a secure channel to Dr. Martinez and the other coalition leaders. After a brief but intense discussion, he addressed the Devourer nexus again. "We will consider your proposal, but only under specific conditions. Complete withdrawal from all currently inhabited systems. Establishment of a neutral zone monitored by coalition forces. Gradual, supervised exchange of knowledge. There was a pause, longer than any previous, as if the entire Devourer consciousness was debating the terms. "Acceptable," came the response finally. "We will withdraw. The new paradigm begins." As the Devourer constructs began to disengage, retreating from the battlefield in perfect, geometric formations, Cooper turned to his communications officer. "Send to all coalition and council vessels. Stand down weapons but maintain defensive posture. The immediate threat has been contained." The celebration that followed was tempered by the knowledge of what had been lost. Dozens of inhabited worlds consumed, billions of lives extinguished, entire species reduced to refugees. Yet from the ashes of this devastation, something unexpected had emerged. True galactic unity, forged in the crucible of existential threat. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council was reconstituted on a new foundation. The Exile decree against humanity was not merely revoked, but repudiated, replaced with a formal acknowledgement of humanity's pivotal role in galactic salvation. Admiral Cooper, once the architect of humanity's shadow exodus, became the first human to serve on the Council's executive committee. Jake Morrison, promoted to fleet commander, oversaw the integration of human and Council defense forces into a unified structure designed to monitor the fragile truce with the Devourers and defend against any future threats. "We could never have imagined this outcome when we stood in that council chamber all those years ago," Lisa Hayes remarked to him as they watched the ceremonial commissioning of the first joint species vessel built with the combined technologies developed during the crisis. Jake smiled wryly. Cooper did. Not the details, perhaps, but he saw Exile as an opportunity from the very beginning. Freedom to prepare, to develop, to become what we needed to be when the moment came. "And now we build something better than either humanity alone or the Council alone could have created, together." Dr. Zoe Martinez's multi-species research team became the foundation for a new galactic science directorate, dedicated to understanding and advancing technologies that had once been restricted under old Council protocols. The coalition of rogue factions that had formed in the deep dark evolved into a formal alliance of innovation, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Captain Dan Miller, recognized for his unprecedented communication with the Devourers, led the delicate mission of establishing the protocols for the knowledge exchange agreed upon in the truce. His experiences had given him a unique perspective on the thin line between existential threat and potential coevolution. "They're not so different from us, in some ways," he explained to a skeptical council delegation. "They consume to survive, to grow, to expand their understanding of the universe. They just never encountered a species that could make them consider alternatives to their fundamental nature." "Until humanity," the Altarian representative observed. Dan shook his head. "Until all of us, working together. No single species could have achieved this outcome." In the decades that followed, the galaxy transformed. The rigid hierarchies and stagnant technologies of the old Council gave way to a more dynamic, collaborative civilization. The habitats and shipyards built in secret during the Exile years became centers of innovation and cultural exchange. The AI systems developed beyond Council restrictions became partners rather than tools, contributing their unique perspectives to galactic governance. And beyond the established worlds, in the vast emptiness, where once only the Devourers roamed, joint exploration missions began to venture outward, seeking not just resources or territory, but understanding of the universe, of other forms of life, and of themselves. Admiral Cooper, in the twilight of his long career, stood with Jake Morrison on the observation deck of Harmony Station, a massive habitat constructed at the precise point where human exile territory had once ended. Below them, Vessels from 100 worlds moved in carefully choreographed patterns, a visible symbol of the new galactic order. Was it worth it? Jake asked quietly. All the deception, the risk? Cooper smiled, the weariness in his eyes balanced by deep satisfaction. Ask the billions who would have been consumed if we hadn't been ready. Ask the species that would have been extinct without our intervention. And the Council? Do you think they've truly changed or just adapted to necessity? Does it matter? Cooper countered. Change comes in many forms, for many reasons. The outcome is what counts. He gestured toward the stars, visible beyond the station's protective field. We're out there now, Jake. Really out there. Not just physically, but philosophically. Breaking boundaries. Asking questions that would have been forbidden a decade ago. Creating possibilities that neither humans alone nor the Council alone would have imagined. Jake nodded slowly. From exiles to saviors to partners. Precisely, Cooper agreed. The galaxy tried to contain us, and in doing so, set us free. I can think of no better outcome to our exile. As they watched, a new vessel emerged from the station's massive construction bay. Sleek, powerful, unlike any design previously seen. Its hull bore markings from a dozen different species, including the distinctive geometric patterns that had once adorned Devourer constructs. The first of the deep exploration fleet, Cooper explained. Crewed by representatives from all Council worlds, plus human AI advisors. They'll be venturing beyond the galaxy's edge, seeking contact with other civilizations. Looking for more like the Devourers? Jake asked. Looking for different answers to the same questions all sentient life asks, Cooper corrected. Who are we? What can we become? What lies beyond our understanding? Jake smiled. Questions worth asking. Questions worth being exiled for. Cooper agreed, his gaze fixed on the stars that had once seemed to limit humanity, but now invited them onward into a future bright with possibility.